folks know, but for people that don't, I'm the executive director of Zen Peacemakers, and every once in a while I bring in something from Zen Peacemakers, so I'll do so tonight. Years ago, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago, the fellow who founded Zen Peacemakers, Bernie Glassman, had a profound experience, really profound experience of the oneness of life. Not in a sentimental, hallmarky kind of a way, but viscerally, in a real way. And really had the feeling that so many are and he always used the metaphor of the dinner table and a meal, and that so many are not invited to the meal. There isn't a seat at the table for them. It's a good metaphor, it works. And in founding Zen Peacemakers, he sought to do something about that. But what it is that he sought to do is unique. I don't know of any other organizations that approach suffering in the world in the same way. Many of you, I'm sure, are aware of the first Auschwitz-Birkenau Bearing Witness retreat that Bernie did 28 years ago. And some here have probably been there on that retreat. And the organization has continued to do things like that. In going to Auschwitz, it wasn't to make a political point, it wasn't to fix anything. It was to heal. And his intention really was not just to have Jewish people or relatively affluent North American people go and feel badly about the Holocaust. He really endeavored in the beginning to bring together survivors, survivors' families, perpetrators and their families, prison guards, Nazis, public officials, and to make a real hot soup of this, where people would work it out. It's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary thing. And he based the practices in Zen Peacemakers on something that we use here. We refer to the 3 tenets in our Fusatsu ceremony, where we recommit to the vows that we've taken. And those 3 tenets are not knowing, and this is the mind of meditation, not holding on to concepts or ideas or stories or opinions or an image of who I am or what's going on. Bearing witness, meaning looking at this world, all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the horrible and the beautiful, looking at it and not turning away, and being still in not knowing. And then, and I've sort of turned the words around a little bit, but what I like to say is waiting until your heart tells you what to do, and then get up and go do something. We don't know what that is. It might be do nothing, actually. Zen Peacemakers kind of exists in that geography of engaged Buddhism. The Buddhist Peace Fellowship was founded by Robert Aitken long before Zen Peacemakers, and was really anti-war. It took a position. The Thich Nhat Hanh organization has been very political over the years. Zen Peacemakers, we are decidedly non-positional, which is really challenging for people. Bruce has been in a lot of our programs, and you encounter this, that we want to take a position. We want to be on the side. We want to be on the right side. We want to be on the winning side, the righteous side, and we want to oppose the bad side. It's human nature. It's kind of what we do. Our brains are kind of wired that way. They work sort of logically and linearly and in a binary kind of a way. Meditation interrupts that. In my relatively short tenure, that is the most challenging thing that people come across in what it is that we do. In fact, we have about 6,000 members around the world. There's a whole bunch of them who probably don't even necessarily believe that that's what we should be doing. They don't really buy it. And when you're really confronted, it's breathtaking and daunting as a practice challenge. Can I actually do this? Can I actually look at the world? Look at Sudan right now. Nobody's talking much about Sudan. What population of 45 or 50 million people, half of whom are displaced. Kind of makes our other conflicts pale a bit. At any rate, can I look at that and not find somebody to blame, but rather just have compassion for those who are suffering. Sorry for the rambling intro. And I've talked about this before, but I ran, and also I'll apologize, because I know a number of you have seen this before. You probably read it in our newsletter, or seen it if you subscribe to Eve Marko's blog, you read it there. I read it aloud a couple of times, so I'm not sure who's seen this and who's not. I'll take the risk, but the repetition is good. I've read this 8 times now. My good friend Roshi Eve Marko, who was Bernie Glassman's most recent wife, Bernie passed away 5 years ago, or in 2018. How many years ago? 5+ years ago. And Eve lives and teaches in Massachusetts. In fact, my daughter took the vows with Eve, which is just kind of really weird, a really weird connection. I love it though. And she posted this on her blog the other day. And she has family in Jerusalem. She's an American citizen now, but she was born in Israel. She goes back several times a year. In fact, she's been back while there was conflict more recently. And that kind of blows my mind that she does that. And this is not too long. Her pieces are usually 700-800 words, something like that. So bear with me. I want to read this to you because I think it's it takes her a little bit to get to it, but it's a beautiful elucidation of the 3 tenets of not knowing, bearing witness, in this case, particularly to what's going on in Israel and Gaza and the West Bank and so forth, and now with Iran. Not turning away, but not taking a position, and feeling it. It's called Where Am I Living? On Saturday night, I spoke to both my sister and brother in Jerusalem as they awaited a drone and missile attack from Iran. Drones had already been launched with a long travel time, and my sister told me it felt strange to lie in bed expecting drones, each with lots of explosives, to arrive and drop down. These weren't coming from the south, as did the rockets from Hamas. They'd be coming from the northeast, which meant from the direction of Jordan and Syria and into Jerusalem. My brother informed me that he heard they were anticipating missiles as well, which in fact were launched, with pinpoint precision, much more deadly, though they were expected to be aimed at military installations rather than civilians or basic infrastructure. When you're lying in bed waiting for all this to happen, that reassurance means bupkis, a lovely Yiddish word that I like. Their expectations turned out to be correct. Just an hour later, he texted, "Sirens." There were lots of explosions in the air. "Where am I living?" my sister exclaimed on the phone. I also couldn't sleep. I imagined her lying alone in her bedroom in her apartment, awaiting for heavy dynamite to be dropped on her building or a missile to hit her street, the entire city. I could hear the anxiety level, the rush of fear for her family. When the sirens go off, there are 90 seconds to get to a shelter, and she didn't have one close enough. Children and animals are terrified. Babies cry. The military makes reassuring sounds, reminds everyone there are defenses, but in a basic way, there aren't. Inside, the heart beats. I'm a human being. I'm scared. What will happen to me? 2 oceans away, I knew there was nothing I could do about it. My home and bedroom were safe, but the people I cared about weren't. Like them, I couldn't sleep. Sometimes that's called empathy. When it's your family, people say it's only natural to feel their pain. After all, you're so close. Several hours later, still unable to sleep, the thought flashed in my mind, where am I living? How about I'm living in a country that has been doing this to hundreds of thousands of others over almost 6 months, using drones, missiles, and heavy-duty bombs dropped by planes and helicopters. And Gaza has no anti-aircraft equipment, no Iron Dome missiles to shoot them down before they kill and cause damage. Even sirens don't work, given how much Israel has jammed their systems electronically. One moment, a Palestinian family is sitting in a room eating breakfast. The next moment, everyone is gone. I've been thinking a lot about this since Saturday night. I thought of my mixed feelings for the best-selling book, White Fragility, which some of us here I think have read, by Ibram Kendi, in which the author takes to task white women who cry or who indulge in other emotional responses, as if to say, we have no patience for those of you who feel bad about racism, those of you overwhelmed by emotional reactions. Racism is a fact, and nothing will help but your becoming an anti-racism activist. If not, as Kendi wrote, you're promoting racism. I know that empathy often becomes drama. I've heard enough people wallow in self-condemnation and guilt, mistaking sympathy for sentiment and reactivity for action. The self can co-opt everything and make it all about the self. I've seen that many times. But I'm not ready to discount empathy. I'm not ready to feel traitorous because I carry a dual narrative when I should really stand for only one thing and bang the door shut on everything else. Eric Wemple at the Washington Post wrote an excellent article about the implosion that took place in the digital magazine Guernica after it was published, then retracted an article written by Joanna Chen, an English Israeli activist, a translator of both Arabic and Hebrew, who refused to serve in the Israeli army and who continues to go to checkpoints to pick up sick Palestinian children to bring to pediatric hospitals in Israel. Chen wrote, "It is not easy to tread the line of empathy, to feel a compassion for both sides. A staff member of the magazine wrote that everyone working there agreed on a shared vision of fighting imperialism, colonialism, and racism, and that Chen's article didn't meet those criteria. I, for one, feel that you can be all for a stop to the fighting and bombing. You can bring massive amounts of food and water into Gaza and release hostages without trying to fit the situation into various Western progressive templates of isms mentioned above, most of which I don't find relevant to the history and complexities of that part of the world. But more importantly, I'm not ready to eschew the power of empathy in favor of some concepts that demand to be the only lens through which to see anything. I back any agreement enabling both people to live with sovereignty and dignity, not because of concepts, but because simply the land belongs to them both and they have nowhere else to go. That's it. Bottom line. Practical all the way. Each side has its view, which can open doors to the whole world or become an isolating, delusional bubble. Horror is horror, regardless of where in the equation you put it. I can weigh it more heavily on one side than the other, and I do. What Israel's done in Gaza is unconscionable. But woe unto all of us if we can't imagine what it's like to lie holding young, terrified children while missiles and drones explode in the air, regardless of who does this to whom. Woe unto us if we've lost the ability to feel the other's pain. I think, and I hope that resonated on some level. I think Eve's words are essential three tenets expression. She's looking at this situation, very passionately, but non-positionally, or at least not getting stuck by a position. And she's pointing to the suffering on all these sides. Not knowing, meaning having a still and clear mind, and not holding on to ideas, opinions, stories, or judgments. Bearing witness, seeing the world, all of it, pleasant and not turning away from it. And taking loving action from not knowing and bearing witness. Bernie Glassman talked a lot about the one body, something that he experienced personally. It's an experience that's available to all of us. We may not all have that experience. But the one body, and it's a bit of a metaphor, but he wasn't being poetic. So if we support this side in opposition to that side, that might feel good, but are we slicing up the body? But life cries out for us to take some action, to protect the suffering, protect the weak, protect the old and feeble, the poor. Now, how do we do that without taking a fixed position? Taking those positions seems natural. It's what we do, like I said, as humans. But I think the three tenets and Eve's words, once she got to her point, offer us a third way. And I'll just repeat what she said. She says here, but I'm not ready to discount empathy. I'm not ready to feel traitorous because I carry a dual narrative here, when I should really stand for only one thing and bang the door shut on everything else. And I think her voice there was talking as an Israeli. I really should stand on this side, but I don't. I have a dual narrative. Her family's in harm's way. We would completely understand if she took that side. It'd be hard to fault her for that. She also teaches us that silence on the matter isn't the solution. It's an easy way out, to just be silent and not engage in any conversation about this. But sometimes that conversation is that third tenet of taking action. What are you going to say? How do I say something that will heal suffering without slicing the one body? And she shows us that holding dual narratives, or perhaps endlessly multitudinous narratives, is perhaps the way. Having empathy for everyone's suffering, feeling them intimately, surely is a solution. What needs to be done here? These people need food. They need water. They need safe shelter. They need medical care. That can be done non-positionally. Feel the one body. The body that is us, and includes everyone and everything. I'm going to close this here. It's gone too long, I think. I'd like to suggest the situation in Gaza, Palestine, and Israel, along with all the others. I mean, Haiti is still a mess right now. Sudan and places that don't even pop up on page 6 of the New York Times. They're teaching us. I don't want this to sound like privileged Americans sitting here getting the luxury of being taught by suffering poor people elsewhere in the world. That's not my point. But as we look at this and not turn away, we have this opportunity to learn something from this, and how to regard it, and how to be still, and how to have empathy and compassion without taking a side. These things are unspeakably horrible and tragic, but we're challenged to look at them and not look away, to keep a quiet mind and an open heart for everybody that's involved, everybody. Now what can we do? Thank you.